Biff Tannen is one of the most misunderstood and unjustly healed out villains in movie history, at least the version from the original 1955 timeframe. In fact, Back to the Future might be the most pathetic, irresponsible story of destroying a man just to save your own butt ever put on film. Now, we're shown the film from Marty's perspective, and Biff is the main villain, and a constant thorn in his and the McFly family craw for a very long time. All Marty's life, in fact. So Marty, carrying this chip on his shoulder, engages in the most egregious victimization of a human being using timelines since Miles Dyson's son. First of all, Biff is a product of a broken home. Judging from the Tannen family history and the sliding scale of deviant behavior from his great-great-grandfather down to him, it's not unreasonable to believe that his father is dead or in prison. In fact, he might be the first generation of Tannen to avoid it. His grandmother is alone, as it's clearly stated,
I'm at the address. It's the only Tannen in the book, but I don't think this is Biff's house. It looks like some old lady lives here.
And who knows where his mom is? So Biff, abandoned in this small town, with a family reputation for being generation after generation of the worst people the place has ever known, fell into the trap that the town created for him and slid into the role of school bully. Far from a crime worth damning him to a life of poverty and servitude. Biff's first encounter with Marty is in the cafe on the Saturday morning that Marty arrives, and frankly, ignores him. As far as Biff is concerned, this kid doesn't even exist, but Biff is already living rent-free in Marty's head for 17 years now. So when the opportunity arises to confront Biff in defense of his mom on his first day at school, Marty goes way overboard and yanks him by his collar. Now, I get it, Biff is getting handsy as hell, but A, this is 1955. Enough said. B, Lorraine doesn't need his help. She seems to have the situation in hand.
Shut your filthy mouth. I'm not that kind of girl.
And C, keep in mind, nobody but Marty in this equation knows Lorraine is his future mother. From Biff's perspective, who the hell is this rando, 3-foot-tall manlet putting hands on him over a game of cat and mouse with a girl Biff's known since kindergarten?
Said, get your meat hooks off. Please.
After a complimentary showing of 1955 bravado, Biff graciously lets Marty go.
Since you're new here, I'm gonna cut you a break.
Which is lucky for him because there is no way Marty can take Biff in any kind of fair fight.
And get out of here.
The next day, Biff is out performing the duties that frankly this small town's expectations of the Tannen family have thrust upon him, and is taxing George for his lunch money.
How much money you got on you?
Now, this is not a nice thing to do, but in the grand scheme of things, keeping your dad from getting his lunch money taken in school is a stupid reason to risk destroying the timeline and causing a paradox that obliterates existence. But that's exactly what Marty does, because as we said before, he's an asshole. He sneakily trips Biff like the little bitch he is, and is once again surprised Biff is taller than him. Biff is absolutely stunned this little shit is still stalking him and constantly attacking him at this point. He's done nothing to Marty. And without warning, Marty sucker punches him, and while his gang is stunned at the bitch move they just witnessed, Marty knocks them down and runs away from the fight. Then Marty proceeds to steal a child's toy, illegally hitch a ride, showboating in front of more witnesses than the chaos effects can describe,
That thing he's on.
It's a board with wheels.
It's an absolute dream.
assaults some innocent people, and essentially terrorizes the town like an asshole, while Biff and his friends pursue this bastard for the sake of the community's safety. In the end, Marty causes a collision that does $300 worth of damage to Biff's car, which in case you're wondering is about $2,300 today. And Biff still doesn't know who the hell this kid is. From Biff's perspective, this twitchy midget has been tripping and sucker punching him then just running away for 2 days now. Biff and Marty don't meet again until Saturday when Biff is picking up his car from being repaired. Also keep in mind he had $2,300 on hand in high school to pay for that. He's not a bank robber, and I'm pretty sure he hasn't pilfered $2,300 in lunch money from George McFly. This is probably his freaking college money, and considering he went from being an upper management ladder climber with accountant slaves doing his reports, to detailing the McFly family auto collection, that college education was pivotal for him having any kind of a future. Screw the Tannen family, right? Marty wants a 4x4. In fact, from old Biff's perspective, he's simply correcting the fuck up in the timeline caused by Marty. Him giving Biff the almanac was self-defense, a correction of the timeline. So that's what he does, as Marty hitches another free illegal ride, enters Biff's grandma's house, and gets stuck like an asshole. That evening, Marty too is hitching yet another free pilfered ride from Biff by hiding in his back seat. They get to the dance and Biff proceeds to be a 1955 rascal by spiking the punch and reading nudie magazines. He's a wild and crazy party guy. All this while Marty stalks and spies on him in an attempt to pilfer his property. Remember, 1955 Biff didn't steal this book. A relative with a pretty believable resemblance of me in 50 years gave it to him. Biff was probably wondering if this was his long-lost father or grandfather with a resemblance that strong. Marty stalks Biff outside, getting in position to be a sneaky little rat once again, when Mr. Strickland arrives and stops Biff from responsibly handling his teenage hormones and inner virgin rage through enjoying a quiet moment with some porn and a shot of whiskey, preparing to go home and knock one out in Grandma's attic. Biff is respectful to Mr. Strickland, and Strickland unfairly berates him about his non-existent attitude problem.
Homework, Tannen?
No, it ain't homework, cause I ain't at home.
You've got a real attitude problem, you know that, Tannen? Just watch it.
Biff has his nudie magazine stolen, and Marty, because he's a selfish, heartless jerk who'll do anything to get his 4x4 and take Jennifer's virginity in the woods, pursues Mr. Strickland now. Biff is like, fuck this party, and goes to the parking lot to go home. On the way, he notices Marty with his lifelong crush parked while he's on the way to his car. This kid has been stalking him, sucker punching him, and owes him over $2,000. So he does what any 1955 man would do. Yanks that little bastard out of the car by his collar. Now here's where Biff begins to lose his mind, but let's try to understand. He's been stalked, beaten. He's had to give up college for this little jerk who he doesn't even know. For 72 hours straight, he has had his manhood completely taken from him. And just when he was gonna have a drink, go home, knock one out, he gets his porn stolen and finds Marty smashing with his girl? Okay, he goes rape crazy, and we condemn this, but let's be fair, without Marty's intervention, the alternate Biff rape timeline wouldn't even be happening. And what happens to Marty for all this trouble now that he has him? $2,300 in damage to his car, his entire future ruined. One punch to the gut, and gets tossed in a trunk for 10 minutes. That's it! Luckily, George shows up and snaps him out from his temporary virgin insanity with the most telegraph punch in history, so Lorraine is safe. But then what happens? 30 seconds after, Biff begins to wake up and Marty, too, sucker punches him again! And in addition to that, steals the only thing his possible father has ever given him. A few minutes later, Biff wakes up and tracks Marty 2 down, beaten and tattered, to challenge Marty to a fair 1950s fisticuffs match. When Marty 1, through sheer virtue of his own lack of awareness, knocks out Marty number 2. Biff finds out he's being stolen from for the second time tonight, and this time kicks Marty twice in the gut, once for the thievery, once for the $2,300 and the future that he cost the Tannen family. Then he leaves. Even with Marty chasing him and screaming, he drives away. But that's not good enough for Marty McAsshole here. Him and Doc Brown chase Biff down, and instead of following him until he stops, formulating some plan, using some discretion since they have a functional time machine at this point, they instead engage in a high-speed highway confrontation through a winding mountain road and tunnel. Keep in mind, Biff has no idea what a hoverboard is, so he's driving, minding his own business, and this flying asshole once again tries to wreck his car and steal his shit. Biff even begs and pleads with him.
Let go of the car!
At this point, it's becoming apparent that Marty, who can now fly, is supernatural or something, and he attempts to shake him. Remember, Biff has seen this kid become 2 people at once now, fly, kick his friend's ass while simultaneously playing Johnny Be Good on stage. On top of all that, he's been drinking, he's taken a few blows to the head, and he's got virgin blue ball rage. But Marty McScrew-You just won't stop. Biff is terrified and panicking and tries to fight Marty off. However, Marty just does some flying aerial gymnastics to obtain the almanac, now putting Biff in full view of the impossible. This kid, who just showed up and ruined his life for no reason, is now flying. Now probably crippled with insanity and disbelief, he knows Marty will never leave him alone. He desperately tries to pursue Marty, take the fight to him. It's the only thing he can do. And make no mistake, a 1946 Ford could have caught Marty going 5 miles an hour on a children's toy. This is proof that Biff still doesn't want to hurt him, but what can he do? Marty has now attempted to murder him multiple times. In another runaway bitch move, Marty escapes getting a few bruises by having Doc Brown save his ass and causes Biff another $2,300 in damage to his classic car. In 1 week, this kid shows up out of nowhere, sucker punches, then bitches out of every fight, wrecks his car, costs Biff his college education and the Tannen family their first generation of college-educated children. Against all odds, sucker punches him again, steals his book, wrecks his car, and damns him to a life of servitude and mediocrity. Biff was the real victim in Back to the Future. Marty McFly is an asshole.